Welcome, everyone, to our discussion today, Attack from Within by Barbara McQuade. Who would like to start us off?
I will. I thought that, here it is. This is how far I've gotten, which is right about halfway. She has quite a lot of notes in the back. So it's about 300-page book and I'm at 155. And I will finish it. I just find it so depressing. I really, it seems almost overwhelming to overcome the problems with disinformation, especially, given social media and, how things, and the development of all these, foreign actors that are setting up accounts. And so all of that, just all of it. And so the anonymity of it, she brought out so many things. So I thought it was a hard book from that standpoint. And I guess that'll be my starting comments.
Okay, I have to agree with you. I had to read this book in bits and pieces. I could read a little bit. And then I'd have to put it down because it was pretty overwhelming. And then I often will read before I fall asleep at night, and I couldn't do that because I was thinking horrible things all night long. If I found it a little textbooky, and so that made it a little less enjoyable if in terms of the reading aspect of the book. And I felt as I got into it that it was a little redundant. Mm-hmm. On the positive note, she does offer chapter 10 or 11, she offers some glimmer of hope or some solutions. And I thought that was important. But you had to get in, 300 pages in before you thought, well, maybe there is some hope, but I'm not really sure that there is. This is really a problem, and it's going to be a huge problem as we go forward in these next months. But I'm glad I read it, and I do recommend it to my friends with a few caveats. Letting them know that it is textbook-ish. But she did a phenomenal job of researching. And so I'm really glad I read it, but it was a tough read. And I had to only do it in small amounts that I could digest before I could move on.
She also, within paragraphs, she made a lot of subheadings and headings, and in a way that chopped it up, and in a way it kind of helped because you could kind of read a section.
You meant within a chapter, not within a paragraph. You said within a paragraph.
Pardon me?
You meant to say within a chapter, she had headings and subheadings, right?
Oh, yeah. What did I say?
Paragraph.
Oh, within a paragraph. No. Yes, within a chapter, there were a lot of, headings and subheadings, and many, much more than in a lot of books. And so that at least broke the look of the page up as, just small text.
Yes.
I agree. I felt it was difficult to read everything that maybe Trump has said and that international governments have done. And her warning in comparison is accurate, and it's frightening. And I'm thinking to myself, how did this happen? And so in the beginning, but I do have to say it does get better. I guess I agree that it was organized in a way that I could read as much, I could read to the next point in the chapter, which she bolded, and you knew how you had a page and a half or you had 3.5, and it made it easier to read, and I could decide how much time I had and what I would read. And so I did it that way. I'm not totally finished. I'm on page almost 180. And then I went and I looked at the last chapter for the solutions. And I read those headings. And then I read her. She has another piece after that, just like a summary.
Yeah.
And I read that, her conclusions or her, and I guess I kind of agree. I don't think most people are stupid. I think people are smart. They can figure things out if they have the truth, like she said. And if they, I think one of the problems is that it's been very, very difficult to talk with people about politics. In the past, you could talk about things and you'd have a conversation, but it is difficult, and I think that's one of the problems that we have to surmount. Is, if she said you need to like in the back part, she said that in Ireland they had to vote on whether they would allow abortion or not, and there was no fighting, no stress. People would hand out leaflets, and then they would talk to other people about, do you have any questions about this standpoint, voting yes or no, and they would talk about it. And it was all very peaceful and calm, and everybody knew what the issues were, and they ended up passing that, and with quite a margin, I believe. And so they've worked it out, and she said because they want to preserve their I don't know, their democracy. It's more important. The democracy is more important than having this disruptive leader or whatever, or have, it just was, so it keep reading. I think the end parts are good, and I think people know. I really find it difficult to understand why so many Republican really big good people have gone along with this. I have to really admire, or has gone along with the disinformation. I really have to admire Cheney and the people, and the other person who was on the committee with her. And
Kinzinger.
Yes.
Kinzinger today just endorsed Biden. Today.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I think as that comes out, I think people will have to relook at things and say, well, gee, I like that person is smart. They, what am
Hopefully. Hopefully.
I guess
I think
the human nature, but the problem is if it, if they do have it rigged enough that like the boundaries and all of that, if that's, for example, the popular vote Hillary had, but she still didn't win the election because of how the electoral college was set up. So there are, I think, I want to say systemic issues to be solved, and those are difficult too. But I'm optimistic that people are smart enough to figure things out most of the time.
be careful.
What's that?
I said, yeah, being optimistic is nice, but that's not going to cut it, I'm afraid.
No.
I think, the Ireland thing, I did kind of what you did, and I got about as far as you and Stephanie did as well. I'm on 170, and then read a little bit of the end parts. And I think one difference between the Ireland fight about abortion and ours, say, if not the broader set of issues we're facing here, is this disinformation. I suspect that there was less disinformation in Ireland. I mean, politics are always nasty. People lie, but it seems like we have taken it to a level that is unprecedented in its impact and scope. And that is largely the problem. As you say, I mean, I think there are a lot of stupid people out there, but not that many. And that they have been duped into thinking that Trump's way is the way out of whatever distress these people are suffering. And as Barbara writes, this is classic authoritarian playbook stuff. It's what all the successful authoritarians throughout history have done. They're just playing us.
We have normalized all sorts of bad behavior since 2016.
Yeah.
Bullying, abusive language, lying, cheating, stealing, it's all become normalized under the past administration.
Right. Well, and nobody has the courage. Everybody's accusing all the Republican Congress people from being wimps for not standing up to Trump, because historically people did stand up to dishonesty and the like. But not only is it Congress that's not standing up, but someone was pointing out last night on the news, this guy from Yale Management School, that the CEOs seem primed. CEO, club, whatever that is, the richest guys in the world, I think, they could make a stand and express what we think is their collective opinion, that this guy's a bozo. And then there's the church, all the churches, the religious side of things, and they're all holding their noses because, well, they want whatever it is, abortion and whatever it is that they want, they're going to get it from him, in spite of the fact, or despite the fact, that he's a philanderer and a sinner, and he couldn't give a damn about religion. And then, well, I don't know, academics, I think by and large are on the right side of things, but I think they've been undermined by this Israeli-Palestinian thing. At least that's where a lot of the activity is, and it's like a distraction from the main issue here in our country, this election. And then you can help me with defining other blocks of people who could come together. The military, for example, there's some leaders in the military who have expressed discontent about Trump individually, but why aren't they all grouping together and saying, no, no, no?
I think the media is a huge problem.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, why isn't there a law against lying? There should be a penalty, because that's a large part of the problem, is that people get really good at lying, and then they say it over and over again. As she points out, one of the tricks is just keep saying it and people will believe it's true.
And
First Amendment.
And they know it's not, they know it's a lie. And just with reckless abandon, repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And with just, it is just the way it is. And I mean, Trump himself has told so many lies, you couldn't even keep track of it. And kind of, in the debate that's coming up, people are saying, should Biden be trying to even respond to the lies, or how much should he take from, to try to correct different things versus making his own points and all of that, because lies is just the way he goes and his party.
Yeah.
I read the whole thing. I actually listened to it, which I found very good because she narrated it, and she's such a dynamic speaker. Good Lord. And she, frankly, I was able to listen to big hunks of it at a time because she's so easy to listen to. So that helped. And I think I agree with many of the things that were said already. I mean, I have several people in my own extended family that I just always wanted to say to them, and sort of have, in everything else, you're a reasonable person and you're smart and whatnot. And how on earth did you get sucked into this Trump thing? If there's a couple of them that are Trump supporters. So I thought the book was very helpful in pointing that out, how otherwise reasonable people might have gotten sucked into this this lying. And particularly the emphasis on free speech, saying that when we were talking about lying, no matter what, we're so fixated on people being able to say whatever, that even if they say things that are known to be false, and even if the media knows that, they still publish it to give both sides of the story, when in fact, other reasonable people or a reasonable person could say, how is that reasonable? How is that giving two sides to the story when one's a lie, a known lie, and the other is truth? I mean, and I say to my relatives, even Fox had to pay what, 750 million or something to Dominion. It was proven that they're saying lies, and yet you're still knowingly, and you're still listening. Just explain that to me so I can understand it. So I'd have to pull out my hair every day thinking, how is the whole half of the country gone mad? Yeah, and so when so many lies are said, and someone said, how can people not be held accountable? Frankly, she gave one example where someone I think was held accountable. It actually surprised me, like, oh, remember there were two guys who got together and they were targeting Black voters by saying, you can vote by text, just text Hillary to this number and that will be your vote. So they were trying to steal away. Then those people thought they voted, so then they didn't vote and they lost their vote. And because those two guys didn't want the Black vote, which might have helped push the Democratic agenda. And apparently they were, she said they were convicted of something about communications felony or something. But she didn't say, are they languishing in jail? Did they have to pay a fine? Is it a slap on the wrist? I mean, I don't know. And I'd love to just look that up to see, is it true that lying sometimes you can have to pay for the consequences, or maybe not? I don't know. The other thing too, just one last comment, although I could make 1,000 comments. When they mentioned like white people sometimes don't even fight back against something that was said false about them. And they gave the Barbara Streisand effect, that example. Someone had published a couple pictures of her home without Barbara's permission, and Barbara went to court and somehow did win that this was an invasion of her privacy or something. But the Barbara Streisand effect then afterwards was only a very few people had seen these pictures of her house beforehand, because who's Googling Barbara Streisand's house? After, however, they read about the lawsuit, now they're thinking, oh, let me see what her house looks like or something. Hundreds of thousands of people then were Googling it. So it's like, okay, to maintain her privacy, she went to court, and what did it get her? But even more loss of privacy. And so I think, sometimes people feel sometimes it's better just to let it alone and hope the story dies. And yet fighting for the truth then is put in second gear, or
I
put
think that's an
in
example
second
of
agenda, or just forgot about. So anyway, there you go. So I did, as I was, and she was saying over and over the various different aspects. And if you make a list as she's talking, or I guess those of you who are reading it, you could just see it. Maybe it was bullet points or something. And I was sort of writing some things down so I could remember them to talk about for this discussion, and it's really frightening. Frightening. And I think we started out by saying, oh my God, how can there, and it's only getting worse, how can we ever in the future, as it gets worse and worse, rely on anything we see or read being the truth? And especially or what do they call it, when it looks for all the world like a video of Joe Biden saying something kind of bad that he never would have said, and it's AI, or there were some other initials she said for that. They can create that stuff. So it's like, I don't know how it just can't get worse and worse. There you go.
I agree with the media thing. I think, I do not understand. I feel like Trump is in the news every single day since he's been out of office. And that is so irritating because, and I agree, if it's been decided that the courts, they shouldn't be giving press anymore to the lie or whether the steal or whatever the heck. And they do. And it's time to stop that, way past time. And so that concerns me too. I don't like that. And I've noticed on Lester Holt, we get news about the weather now and Gaza and Ukraine, but they don't get into the politics much at all. And so I guess it's other things, Fox probably, and then CNN are the other ones. And I was happy to see that in the book. I read that she is a guest on CNN and MSNBC, and I think, yeah, I think that's a good, but I do think the media they give him way too much.
Is she on
And
CNN
what it does is
regularly?
it's a megaphone and it just amplifies, and that's why I don't think that many people tune him out. I tune him out. I don't know, I still think the people that really support him are in the minority. They honestly, I just do, because they're getting all this. It's like a sponge that's all crunched up. When you put water into it, which is publicity, then boom, it looks like it's bigger. I think that's part of the problem, is that it makes it, although all her information in the book, it does pile up and there is a lot to be concerned about. So, but I just think in terms of, we have 370 million people that the majority of them are, and then there's Kimmel, who is very, I call him entertaining, but he's pretty smart too. So
Yeah, thank God for the comedians. Go ahead. Well, Susan,
Barbara
the example
McQuade is going to be. Go
Oh.
ahead.
I've spoken already. You go, please.
I was just going to say, I believe Barbara McQuade is going to be speaking to us in November.
yes,
So that should be
October.
very interesting.
Is it October?
Yeah, I don't know. I just looked at it. I was seeing November, but maybe I'm reading it wrong.
I hope it's October. But yeah.
November 14th.
Oh,
Sorry.
wow. Well, that's
Are you
good.
gone? Yeah, they'll record it hopefully, and you can watch it.
Yeah, but by then maybe she'll have written another book.
Possibly.
Did you say, Corrine, that you've seen Barbara McQuade on CNN?
I've heard her, but in the book, back when they talk about the author, it says that she's been against.
I see her on MSNBC regularly.
Exactly.
me too.
Yeah, me too. I
Oh,
mean,
I'll have to watch
she even brings out this incident not incident, when they gave a town hall to Trump with an audience full of Trump supporters, only Trump supporters, and, lobbed some, easy questions with not follow-up. And it was horrendous thing to do. And that they thought that was newsworthy or anything like that. And that was the day that I stopped ever turning my TV to CNN. I won't watch it at all. And maybe that's extreme, I don't know. But, looking for the truth, and it's kind of hard to find. And one thing I heard in recent shows on MSNBC is how Fox right now, they're already priming their audiences for that Trump will win doesn't win. It can only be fraud. And they're repeating it and repeating it in a myriad of ways, which is, again, disinformation. And, they're getting it early and they're getting it in all kinds of different ways, but they're telling that story again and again.
Well, Stephanie, your reaction to the CNN faux pas, I think that was Caitlin Collins who hosted that. Look at your own reaction. It's like the opposite of the liar's dividend, which was the Streisand thing. That's an example of the liar's dividend, where just raising the objection brings negative press, right? But in your case, you saw it for what it was, which is the ridiculously horrendous thing to see. But intelligent people should have the same reaction you do. So there could be a light at the end of that deep, dark hole, hopefully. But I have a question, though, whether, some of the disinformation, people will just believe it. But I think the trick is that the disinformers are preying upon inherent biases that exist, the racism, the misogyny, the anti-abortion, whatever aspect that they're using and working. People have dispositions about these, probably to a greater extent than any of us here anyway would care to believe. But we do have a ton of racists in this country.
Oh, absolutely.
And I can't stand it.
Read those books last year. I mean, they kind of have.
Yeah. And so that's at least it's not stupidity all by itself. It's racism. It's not a consolation, but it's an explanation, perhaps, for why they're more easily duped.
And she pretty nicely explains too that if you start even a little bit on a certain path, so you've Googled something or on Facebook or whatever, and then of course you get more and more feed but like that. And she pointed out that her own Facebook feed is so different than her sister's. So her sister must have said something she liked and she said something she liked. And so, you're amplifying then what you hear. So if you're racist to begin with and you've gone to a couple of websites or something, and then everything you're seeing is reinforcing what you believed in the first place, it's like, wow, there's kind of no way out of this thing unless someone is really seeking the truth. And how many people are really out there doing that? Most people are out there looking for websites, other people, whatever, who agree with them. Yes, see, all these people think like I do, and further support that I'm right. So it is discouraging, but yeah, I agree with that.
I read the whole book, and I must have read the first part more carefully than the last part. I thought the first 3 to maybe 5 chapters were really very good. The organization I thought was really good, and I really liked the chapter titles and the subtitles, and then even further titles as far as organization goes. Most of it we probably know already, all of this information, but it was so well organized that it was a refresher that was extremely depressing. So if you're only going to read the first 5 chapters, that'll be fine. The rest of it is a lot of historical information that each time you read a sentence, you think, oh God, I remember that. No. So I thought it was difficult to revisit all of that. There were a few concepts that I found that were new to me, or at least I wasn't totally aware of them before. And these were in chapter 3, I think, or chapter 2, about how we all pay more attention to the extraordinary than we do the ordinary, obviously. So that gets our attention, and that's behind most of the disinformation, is something bizarre, something outrageous. Tell the biggest lie to get the attention, to get the news coverage. That's what is happening. And I think what Susan said about presenting both sides of an argument, I hadn't really thought about that much before. Not until MSNBC decided to revoke the offer to a person that was on the
Rhonda McDaniel,
Mhm.
yeah,
Republican National.
to be part of the crew on NSNBC. And I remember how I thought how awful that was that they offered it to her. And then thinking about, well, they're probably thinking about they have to present both sides, and it just causes more disinformation to
Mhm.
more people if you put people like that in places of what, news anchors. So one other thing about normalizing corruption, I think, that's certainly gone on for 8 years, but it came to be pointed out that the President Trump, his pardons were so many, and the people that he pardoned were people that gave disinformation, people who gave bribes, more soft crimes, rather than drug. And there weren't any drug crimes, and there weren't any murders, and there weren't any other kinds of crimes that got pardoned. It was all mostly bribes and corruption.
That helped him.
Yes. So that was kind of interesting. Barbara McQuade has a daily blog, or maybe it's not daily, but it's at least weekly, on Substack that I've been following for maybe the last year. I don't always read it, but when it has a listen button on it, I will listen to it. And those are really pretty good. So that's another source of getting her information. I think one other thing is I like that she reminded us about distraction. And I think this is going to be more important in the next 5 months, that a distraction that causes the news media to talk about it over and over and over again. We ought to be thinking to ourselves, what else is in the news that is not being talked about, that they're trying to avoid or hide? And one example she gave was the hurricane in Puerto Rico, and how it was immediately distracted to the NFL players praying. And so the bit about the hurricane went away. Trump's reaction to the hurricane. So I keep thinking about, how about the time, the Louisiana law that just went into effect in Louisiana about the 10 Commandments. And I think, what other things in the news that should we be paying attention to beside that? This is causing a big disruption. So I'm just going to have to think every time I hear some news, what is the other news that we're not hearing? So,
Well, I think she brought up the point, I think, about like when that bus incident came out, that just showed what a misogynist, sexist pig he was, that he, then, so that was, really bad for him. And very quickly, very quickly, there were emails released. And or if they maybe were the ones from like the Democratic campaign, or I can't remember, or it might have been something about Hillary's, but there was a big distraction right away to take away from talking about that bus. And I think that I'm just kind of watching, intrigued by, he said he's been preparing all his life for these debates, so he doesn't really have to go in a room because all his life has led to this moment. And so, but if he bombs and there's news about that, I think he'll just quickly announce his vice president or something that will put the news onto something else quickly. I think distractions out there constantly.
There's one thing, I don't know if other channels do it, but CNN, they have this guy, I forget his name, where he does this fact checking, usually after a debate or something, and then he'll come on and say, okay, I just checked these 10 things that Trump said, and then he'll say what the facts really support. The only problem is, if you're watching CNN in the first place, you're probably already predisposed to know that or think that or agree with it. I'm not sure if you're watching another channel or Fox, whatever, that you're even going to see fact checking, or certainly not CNN's version of fact checking. But at least it's an effort to say, hey, look, people can just get up there and say, Biden could say things too that, will not be 100% correct or the numbers or whatever. But of course, Trump's falsehoods are more horrifying. So, I don't know. I guess if we're really interested in the truth, it's nice to know that. Reminding us that you can just say whatever you want up on stage, and who's really checking? Who's really checking? Yeah.
Well, right. And you don't have to hold to whatever you said ever. You can always walk it back or say, I never said it, even though there's video and audio documentation. If you say I didn't say it, half the people will believe you in spite of the documentation. This is so messed up. It's so, it comes down to truth. And Barbara makes that point as well. We all have to agree on what truth is. And if you do that, and then you abide by that, then a lot of these problems would go away. Jeez.
I think she differentiates between truth and facts.
Yeah.
Anybody want to comment on that? The facts, of course, lead to truth, but
truth is an interpretation of the facts, and your truth is not my truth necessarily. The alternative reality, alternative facts, is that what's her name said? Yeah. There's okay.
Well, going back about facts, that I just want to say, we all saw the videos of January 6th, but when they said it was just, these are congressmen saying, well, it was just a tour group, this was a regular day at the Capitol, and she had two comments in there that people that have said that, they just came there, they just were normal protesters, they were just, and they made it sound like this is just normal at the Capitol. And we all saw with our own eyes that it certainly was not normal. And to me, I don't see how anybody can dispute that fact. To me, that's a fact. And so when they say that this is not a concern, or, we weren't worried about it, I just don't even get that. Are they blind? They didn't see. And the other thing that bothered me a lot. And the other thing that bothers me is recently there was a report that violence has gone down significantly in the last, 5 years, 10 years. But in the book, she says it's gone down for people over 18 and older, deaths, violent deaths. But I'm thinking, what about the little kids, all the kids, these schools that have been shot up and everything, and teenagers at concerts and all of this stuff? I can't imagine that violence has gone down. So I really, and then she gets into Maslow's needs, safety is number one for everybody in terms of Maslow's needs. Physical, well, I mean, it's second. Physical, be able to eat, sleep, and everything. But safety is second. And that's what these violent actions are, to me, they threaten everybody's safety. You know, people consciously or unconsciously probably take action to make sure that they aren't going to get into anything like that or put themselves at risk. And so I'm concerned about that too. I think they need to look at how many people have died in the last decade because of situations like these terrorist attacks. And I do realize that, you know, some of the people that are committing these acts are mentally ill. And some maybe have issues, personal issues that they can't deal with. I don't know, grudges or something, but there are also racist acts. And I don't know if this is part of the disinformation or what they're trying to create chaos is part of it as well. And to me, that creates a lot of chaos. And then to have the legislators not do anything about it is the worst possible thing. Other countries.
But finally, just yesterday, the Surgeon General declared that gun violence is the leading cause of death for young children for the first time ever. Yeah. And he's come out and publicly said it. You know, for years, I was a prophet at the U of M School of Public Health. There were laws precluding academics from studying deaths by guns, studying guns in any way related to their public health or their impact. It was illegal. And legislations allowed this to be the case. And that's how strong the gun lobby is or was. It was always curious to me, who's behind that? I mean, the gun makers can't be the only ones, right? Is this, again, old white guys thinking, okay, we'll allow guns because it's only the poor people and the blacks that'll kill themselves, and then we'll stay in power. I always have this, rather nefarious, interpretation of that situation, and nothing has dispelled my feelings. All right, great. So yeah, this book has just confirmed and explained in a very systematic, understandable way exactly what I understood to be the case. And so I think you said at the outset, Sharon, it was so depressing to read that you couldn't read much of it at one time. But none of it was a surprise. It was all just articulately presented in a way that confirmed my worst fears. And it's driving me to want to, do something to get the vote out or do something to try to prevent it, because, there's a very real possibility that he could be reelected. Oh God. I'm hoping abortion will be. Sorry?
He's promised to be a dictator from day one.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the soundbite. And there's reasons to. But I know there's all sorts of reasons I don't want him to be there, but being optimistic isn't enough.
It's a call to action.
It is, yeah.
I don't know if any of you get Joyce Vance, who's also on MSNBC, and
yeah,
she's quite brilliant. Every day she, has a civil discourse thing that comes in my email. And
well, sisters-in-law. She and McQuade are in cahoots. Yeah. Sisters-in-law.
Sisters-in-law, yeah.
And there's one more.
With that other one that was on the Watergate thing.
Jill Wine-Banks. Jill Wine-Banks.
Yeah, she's great too. So anyway, today she was talking about how important it is for people to understand Project 2025.
Oh, yes.
Because it's at first glance, it's like, oh my God, this is 900 some pages. How can, I take this in? I don't care about it. But she had percentages of people in all the different parties and everything that understand or even know about it. And not many people did. So she has some links and she said, now just look at the table of contents if you want to know how sweeping it is, and maybe look at something. So I looked at the table of contents and, I mean, nothing goes untouched, but I clicked on education, something near and dear to me. I'm telling you, it's very long, and, things like, parental choice, which, oh, that sounds real good and everything, but it's a reason to, take money from public schools and, give people these endless vouchers for, all kinds of other education, or like individual responsibility means like, we're not going to be giving scholarships and grants. We're going to give loans, and the loans are going to be paid back by the person, and preferably the loans won't be from the federal government. They'll be from corporations, and the private sector can give the loans. And it's so radical. Those are just two little examples, which I think kind of it's saying it in a way up front, but it's kind of dressing it up in language like individual responsibility and parent choice and, all these things, just one thing after another. Like, I really encourage everybody to just stick their big toe in and look at a little bit of that, and you'll be shocked at what they're promising. And, each section is written by a different person. So I don't know how the other ones are, but I felt that the parts that I was reading, I think were dressed up in certain words that would appeal to a lot of people, when really what's underneath it is very scary.
Would you refer to that as disinformation by any chance?
Yeah.
What a surprise.
Karen or Maureen or Sally, do you want to jump in?
I was very happy when I saw that the last two chapters offered some solutions and recommendations, because the whole thing was so awful. There was nothing much new about the information. It's just that putting it all together brought a black cloud down. And it is remarkable to me that so much hatred and disinformation exist in this world. And it's apparently not just the United States. And what kind of role models are we for other countries? Most countries look up to the United States. Even, Kenyans stormed parliament. It sounded just like a reiteration of the storming of January 7th. They had learnt that you can do that sort of thing. They do that in decent countries, and people got killed, and that's the way it is. But you have to assert your values in these outrageous and outlandish ways. I did see that she wanted to offer as a solution, providing facts and other opinions. So much is represented in a way that is extremely convincing to a lot of people. How often have you opened up something that looks like perfectly reasonable news, an offer of a solution to God knows what, psoriasis or weight loss or whatever, and it turns out to be the longest thing imaginable, and turns out to be something completely different from how it was depicted originally? There's just so much that is represented unfairly and inappropriately. And I really don't understand. I really don't understand the attitudes of people who will go with this kind of thing and not question it. I cannot understand why anybody would find any redeeming character, any redeeming characteristic in some of the things that are suggested and believed to be absolutely true. I didn't think I was capable of hate like that, but somebody inspires me to hate.
Well, of those who read her suggestions for solutions, are any of them actionable for people like us, for example? Are there things you could see yourself doing?
I've got about 18 pages to go. So one of them is getting people to not just look at the one point of view that's presented, but alongside it, the alternative should be presented complete with facts. And that's true. Social media are creating so many of the problems. And somebody has to deal with the social media. Another problem that's massive is AI. I mean, you've seen Biden saying and doing things he really didn't say. Is it fair? I don't know the answer. I think AI is proving to be an absolute hindrance in education and in news representation. People believe it. So there's some of what I have to say.
I can't remember specifically the solutions, and I don't have the book in front of me. But it's going to take a collective commitment to doing many of the things that she offers in her book. But she did say that the news, our news and media need to play a role in righting some of these crazy wrongs that we've experienced recently.
I think one big old problem about, the idea that we want to hear different viewpoints is it just seems like the days of, John McCain maybe, or, whoever might be up there saying, I don't know, Social Security is best, or whatever, and having an argument on the other side about that, or campaign finance reform. There might be two perspectives, or any number of things. But now it's the Democrats trying to put forth what they want, and then this giant mix of I don't even know what you call it, but it's not equivalent to. That's why I worry about the debate tomorrow, how that will be, because it's certainly not any kind of traditional Democrat Republican debate.
Well, they've got some really, I thought, some thoughtful safeguards in there that I'm sure Biden put forth. One was there was no audience to play to, at least there. And also their microphones are going to be shut off when the other person is speaking.
Yeah, but someone said
no interruptions.
Yeah, but regardless of what happens, Trump will twist it to his advantage. So if he wins, then he'll brag, and if he loses, it's the enemy of the people.
Yeah, but Trump turns people up, I don't know. I just think that there's so many people that don't like Trump too. They don't speak up because who can argue with a maniac, Who wants to get into an argue with your relatives and things? It's not worth it, But I like what she said about speak to people, and it takes grace. Because she said that after the solutions, when that short bit about something else, because I think everybody should be treated with dignity, even the people who are misinformed. And when somebody listens to them and asks questions and say, well, do you really think that, going into the Capitol and breaking windows and putting your feet on people's desk is a normal day at the Capitol? put the facts out and say, is this really what you think?
Did you ever watch Jordan Klepper from The Daily Show? He goes to Trump rallies and tries to reason with attendees at these rallies, and you wouldn't believe how recalcitrant they are, how unbelievably brainwashed they are, and you'd like to think that a reasonable person will respond reasonably to a discourse, to an argument. It doesn't happen, and that's what's so concerning. Truth, it doesn't prevail.
You just
I think
consider, sorry, well, Trump's language. How can people accept that an apparent human being can talk about others in such denigrating ways and with so many insults and remarks that you wouldn't use for your worst enemy, and come up with little descriptions of people?
Yeah.
And name calling.
Name calling, things that he uses routinely.
And his party allows it.
Mhm.
And they
Why
have
does anyone
normalized it. And they will not stand up and punish him or scold him in any way. I wish I knew. Here's a man who tells you to drink bleach to protect yourself against COVID, and nobody goes, well, that's just nuts.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I think a lot of people said that was nuts.
They should have fed him vast amounts of bleach.
Well, it's funny, if this was a fiction book, it would be criticized for, not being truthful, and the author went way overboard developing this despicable character. And here we are in living truth. Getting to the point of, I think you would ask Ted about what solutions did she offer. I just quickly Googled, there was a short interview with her from the Michigan Law online thing. And they asked her specifically, your book offers a number of solutions to fight disinformation. Which ones would be a good starting point? The problem is several of them are quite general, and she said an easy one is to educate the public to help recognize disinformation online. Students have to learn to be very savvy consumers of media, so it's a little general. And then I think the most important solution is our own political will. We must care enough about the truth to take the action to ensure that we have it. So then the person asks her again, most of the solutions, it seems, takes place on a broad society-wide level. What can we as individuals do? And then she said, it's a very short answer. Number one, educate yourself about the tactics that people use for disinformation. Anonymous accounts are one way, bots and artificial intelligence. Verify what you read online before you pass something on. I think we have to refrain from engaging in snarky rhetoric online where we want to own other people who don't share our own views, because that kind of piling on escalates into this demonization. The only problem is, I love all that, but if you're interested enough to even try to combat disinformation, you're probably already halfway there. It's hard to know, of all the people eating it up and haven't really thought about it, how to do it, other than, I guess she's just saying, keep trying to educate. First of all, educate yourself. You read the book, now you know all the different ways people can give disinformation. Now try to educate other people, so maybe when they're watching it tomorrow, they'll recognize repetition, or whatever things are used. It might be interesting for us as we watch it to figure out how many of these things that she listed as kind of techniques of disinformation are being used right in front of our eyes. I'm sure she could write a little summary of it, a follow-up article on her book of what transpired during this debate tomorrow. So anyway, there you go.
Yeah, but it brings me back to this notion of being optimistic. That you could also be viewed as being chumps. Just you watch it happen, better, but it happens anyway if we don't do anything. And why aren't we deploying tactics that are equally as nefarious and as the Republicans? I guess you don't want to stoop to their level. You want to take the high road, but Is it working?
I
I don't
think,
know.
I
You
like
need to develop a bot that
I'd
is
like-
supportive of.
because I think that, you know, you have to treat people with dignity, all people, even if they disagree with you. It's okay to disagree with me, you know? Let's
Well-
talk about it just a minute, and to say that, you know, I think it's important to ask them the right questions, get them thinking about things, because, you know, in a calm way. Because I know that if people ask you the right questions, you might think about that later as well, even though you come up with a snarky answer. You might think about that. You know, I think I can't deal with a system. I can't deal with a whole rally and change people, but it's the people that you interact with one-on-one, and be it family members or anybody else, you know, they may listen to you if you listen and don't argue, but ask a few questions, because sometimes by asking questions, people realize, yeah,
No,
you know,
I think
why
you're giving
do I-
people too much credit, Corinne, because I've seen so many examples where reason doesn't dictate, reason
not
doesn't prevail.
change
And
everybody.
so you can talk to people all you want, but they won't hear you. It's beyond that in many cases. And that's what's so,
Well, maybe, I guess, I don't know. I guess I have my own philosophy, and that's how I would approach it with people that I
sure.
with. And you know, if you're going to be defeated before you start, I personally don't want to get into arguments with people about it, because that's what we're trying not to do. So if you are going to have some kind of discussion, how are you going to proceed with it? You have to have a plan, and so and try things, see what works, you know. I mean, I agree, there are people you'll never change their minds.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not worth talking to, and maybe they are, and they still won't change their mind, but then that's how it is. They have a right to their opinion. But it some people you will. I like what she said about Lincoln, you know. Lincoln, after after the Civil War,
Right.
he wanted to take no all forgiveness, you know. If I know somebody who was really Trumpy and everything, and Biden got in, you can be kind to those people and help them make the transition, you know. I don't know, I just think that you can't start with fighting and expect things to change.
But that's
Yeah.
what we're combating. We're facing a person who is a combatant from the gate. So you don't want to start that way. I don't want to start that way. But lying, cheating, stealing, those are all the norm for
No, he doesn't play by the rules.
there are no rules.
No,
So
I'm not saying he does. I certainly don't want to talk to him, but I might talk to my relatives. I might talk to my neighbors, sit down and have a conversation. And, you know, you simply express what you feel. They say what they feel. People are each heard. And maybe they start to think about things. Maybe you start to think about things. I don't know, but and sometimes maybe you're dealing with someone with a little bit of mental issues too. You know, maybe that's, I don't know, I don't want to say anything, but it's to me it's just you know, it's a way to start. And I can only start with the one-on-ones, you know. I'm not going to go door to door anymore, and things like that. But you start where you are, everybody.
Consider how it is for children learning how to behave in society when they learn that dignity, respect, caring, listening are out the window. Where are they going with their belief in humanity? What are children going to be like growing up thinking that there is one way and everybody should just argue and defend their position vehemently?
Maureen, do you have any comments that you'd like to share?
I have a lot of things to say. The first thing is that I came today fully prepared to talk about the Virginia Woolf book.
Wow.
Like that. But in my defense, I was all proud of myself because for the first time ever, I had that book done and I had already started this book for next month. And I thought, wow, look at me. I'm really a high achiever. So what happened was I got them both from the library. I was traveling. They came at both different times. I grabbed one. And in my mind, I thought, that's the book. And I never questioned it until you said, we're going to talk about this book. I went, what? But I did read the first 2 chapters last night. And Sharon, I had a terrible night's sleep last night. I woke up in the morning. I thought, what's wrong with me? I didn't drink any coffee. I didn't have any alcohol last night. Like there was no reason why, like my sleep was, and I thought, that's it. And I read the first 2 chapters, and I mean, I could feel my heart racing. I mean, it was visceral almost. It was all things that I knew in those first 2 chapters, but it was like, my first thought was, everyone should have to read this book. And then our problems would be solved because they would understand what misinformation was.
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen. And so I will take everyone's advice. I am going to get through the book, but I have to read it in the daytime. The solution part of it, Nancy, I want to really look at that, because even in the first 2 chapters, I was thinking, what can I do? You know, like the January 6th, what do you mean these people are tourists? You know, there's people defecating on someone's desk. Come on, you know, that's not, and you know, like, how do you change that kind of thinking? And I think the thing that resonates with me is that people don't understand what a democracy means because we've always had it. And in our lifetime. And if you pose that question to them, do you feel like our democracy is at risk? They probably won't even be able to answer. So go back and research that out. Find out what that means not to have a democracy. Look at other countries that have flipped and what's happened to the people there. So that was the first thing. And then the other thing I was thinking about was the voting issue, where so many people are saying, oh, I don't, you know, they're whining. I don't like Biden. I don't know if I'm going to vote. I'm like, what? I mean, I try. So I just had this conversation with my brother-in-law, who's a boomer, you know, and I've always voted, but I don't know if I'm going to vote. And I thought I was going to like go after him, you know, like, just like, are you kidding me? And I just very calmly, I just said, if you don't vote, I don't want to know about it, because it just makes me think of you less as a person and a human being. So I shamed him. I I said,
No more brownies for him.
Yeah, nothing. I said,
Hey.
I don't, you know, who cares? You know, I'm so tired of people saying that Biden's old. I'm so tired of hearing that. Look at your choice.
Yeah.
Look
Who's
at your
3 years younger.
Yeah,
You know-
exactly. I'm not talking about, you know, like
Yeah,
this-
but you have to have it up here.
yeah,
Yeah.
Opposition doesn't.
yeah,
So
exactly.
that's an easy
And he
fight.
surrounds himself by good people, and just the whole aspect of being a good human being. Karen, what you were saying about, you know, like children, what, you know, like when you're name calling, I have grandchildren, when you call somebody names, we don't do that in our family. We don't call names. And I taught my children that you just never do that. And I just think about the Christian, I don't even want to say Christian, right? Just Christian people who call themselves Christian, what they can see in this person that is Christian to even vote for someone to just say, oh, and if it's just because of abortion, come on, get over it. You know,
Oh, really?
You know, that's the Christian thing. You're going to risk the rest of the world. And you can't have that conversation with people that are so firm on that one item voting. But I don't understand at a human level how someone can say, I am a Christian and I'm voting for a person who does all the things that we talked about, you know, all the sins,
all the 10 commandments.
you know, how can you do that? So, and I do think someone said that people are quiet. I do think people are quieter who maybe don't want to say, I'm a Republican, but I'm not voting for him. But
just to
who will they vote for is the question. I won't vote. I'm going to do third party. You know, my brother-in-law said, "All right, third party," and I won't tell you what I called him, but it was on the order of like, you don't have any kind of gumption if you can't get over that, you know. But you know, you have to make a stand. Don't say I'm going to vote third party because I don't like this one, but I'm still voting. I mean, it's your choice. It's your choice. But vote. Just vote. So anyways, I was taking in everything everybody said, and I really, it was really refreshing to hear that the book is able to bring so much into such a topic that should be kind of simple, right? Like misinformation, research it.
Sadly, it's more absurd than Virginia Woolf.
Exactly.
Let me just make you all even more depressed. So I get the Washington Post on my phone, the feed, and they ran a survey, and it turns out of people in swing states. And they found out that Trump is trusted more than Biden to save democracy, to address the threat of democracy than in these states. Trump got more votes saying that he would defend democracy than Biden.
But he keeps talking about that. He tells you that he's the savior of democracy, and Biden is the person who is going to destroy democracy. And it's again that repetitive message. And if you're on the other side,
that you have to it just flies in the face of everything. It's because you saw January 6th, he says if he doesn't get elected, it's going to be blood or whatever.
Bloodbath.
Who with any brains is going to think that that's democracy? Come on.
Millions of people.
You know, those feeds on the Washington Post, I mean, in a way, that headline is problematic.
That's right.
It's an article.
And who did they interview? Where did they go?
Yeah. And what is that story? What's underneath that story? And
well, it's WAPO. I mean, if they have a bias toward the left. If anything, you would think that the results would be cooked to go the other way. But they're admitting to people that it's the wrong way. You know, it's upside down. So, and it seems like a legitimate survey. You know, swing states, and then I don't know, some sampling of the population. I didn't get into the weeds, but holy cow! Talk about depressing. So Maureen, in addition to not reading this in nighttime, I think you want to start drinking again. So you can handle it.
Sally, do you want to jump in?
Just to say that I had the same reaction. It's depressing. I'm almost finished with it. I'm reading the suggestions, and I'm really looking forward to hearing her speak to us in November. I think we'll all have some questions for her. You know, I think the solutions are institutional more than individual at this point, from what I've read so far, government-based and social media leadership, you know, taking a stand and realizing that freedom of speech, you know, there needs to be some limitations at times on that. So yeah, it was a tough read, but I'm really glad I read it, and I'm really sad that the people who need to read it won't read it. But you know, I'm gonna share it with people, and hopefully, you know, maybe it'll have some effect. So
do some people fear for her safety?
Mm-hmm.
I do.
No,
No,
didn't.
good.
No.
Because there's lawlessness that's rife.
Well, I'm in the majority. I'm in a very privileged position in my life, and I think there's a lot of people in this country who aren't, may need to be afraid.
I have a question. There was a reference in the book to something that I didn't know about. It was called the 3% movement. And this was towards the end. And I never heard of the 3% movement. And she says that refers to the fact that only 3% of the population during the American Revolution actually fought for freedom and democracy. So that's all she said. But my interpretation of that would be that if this is being used to reassure the minority, the Magna people, that they don't have to have a big group. They just need to be a solid fighters, and they can achieve anything. I don't know if that's correct. Anybody else heard about 3% movement?
No.
Not really, but this is just getting more depressing.
And I was reading an article recently about this guy in Germany who, was really, really on the fringes a few years ago. And he is coming into what's sort of mainstream, like he could be running for office, and he holds beliefs that take Germany back so many decades to really frightening places. And, throughout the world, well, she talks about like Orban, and, we know Putin, and that's, Trump's best friend. But, he's just a liar, liar, liar. And, and now he's cozying up to one of Trump's other favorite people from North Korea. And I don't know, like it's like these are the leaders somehow. And many of them are ones that people chose. And like in France, I think it was a close call recently with the
Le Pen?
yeah. And so I don't know, like the whole thing about democracy and you don't know what you have till it's gone or whatever, like I don't know, didn't know about the war and, fighting for freedom and the right to vote and all of those things. It just, I don't know. I'm rambling here, but I feel like it's just so there's so many parts to it, from working with young people and those people that are going to be taking over from, like, next time who will run and everything if we have an election, and to, I don't know.
I read that book Generations, where they talk about each, the boomers, the X's, the millennials and onward. It was a really interesting book. And the younger people are democratic. They go for the Democrats. But I don't know if that's still true. She's had so much information from, I guess they give 8th grade, 12th graders, everybody they take a survey of what they think, and she had graphs on almost every page. It was really interesting. But the values are each generation kind of changes a little bit, and it's they start out democratic. What they found over time with history is that when they get to being older and in business and they have, stocks and all this stuff, then they start looking at Republicans. They become Republicans later. And so
Well, it's like what it's the famous quote from Churchill is that let's see, if a young man is not a liberal, he has no heart, and if an old man is a liberal, he has no brain.
I hope that isn't true.
But it's the analogy to what you're saying.
Yes, it's interesting because a young person that I know didn't like Hillary Clinton, and I said, well, why not? And he said, well, you know, something about her with the pizza shop and these.
Oh no,
And I
not
said,
the
"Well,
pedophile
you
stuff.
Oh,
I know, I read her book too. And I told him, I said, you know, she was involved in as a college student, a law student, she was involved in Boston, going door to door, asking, do you have any children that don't go to school? And that was the beginning of the handicap education that didn't exist. And so they realized that people weren't sending kids to school because they didn't have any way to do it and no programs. And so they put all this study together. And I said, you know, since she's been a young woman, she's done community service. And, you know, he didn't know this stuff.
She
But
remains the most qualified person to be a president of the United States.
Absolutely.
No one is more qualified.
yes, yes.
If someone believes that the sex child ring in the basement of the pizza parlor, there's no hope. You got to just move on. Just move on. Don't even try to explain to anybody. It just is, you know, it just means, hey, that person's hopeless in my book. I got to move on, as opposed to trying to make sense as to why that is unreasonable to believe.
But young people, you know, different disinformation, who knows what belief people have, but hopefully you can counteract that, or at least give them something else to chew on, you know.
I hear you, sure. Well,
And it certainly supports her very appropriate title or apt title.
Yeah.
That we're destroying ourselves from within.
Yeah.
yes. And another aspect of young people that's a concern is that curricula, you know, is becoming like the subject of, you know, there aren't certain things are getting written out of curricula, getting written out of textbooks. And, you know, like it's so troubling. It's not just the banned books. It's like how they learn about the Civil War, or how they learn about, you know, race in this country, or, you know, human sexuality. But I mean, things are specifically prohibited, and that comes out in that project 2025 education section too. So I just want to say that makes me worried for the younger generation. And if the focus, like they can push into colleges and, you know, destroy the humanities and, you know, like move toward, you know, vocations. And I don't know, I'm worried that a lot of different things could be really messed up for young people in terms of what they learn and what they're helped to understand and everything.
Have you learned about Trump's views on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
He doesn't talk about policy of it. I've never heard him say a word about
I
that.
haven't either.
But I think he's a buddy of Netanyahu.
It would make sense if he were just pro-Israel, period, full stop.
I think he would love to be in Netanyahu's position with this, the power and the holding office as long as he has.
Yeah.
It might change pretty soon, but yeah.
Because although he has some Jewish people in his family, I think their relationships have been destroyed. or they're out of the picture for some reason.
Trump, you're saying?
Yes.
Well, this has been a very, very, very interesting discussion and a very, very, very timely book. Like I said, I'm recommending it to anyone who brings up politics in my presence. I encourage them to pick it up and read it. And I hope you all do too.
And I hope book groups like this will proliferate, because I think that people find it interesting, I certainly do, to discuss these issues.
Right. Book club members will become the swing voters of the United States. That's an optimistic.
Well, thank you all for your comments. I'm going to end the recording unless someone has some additional.
I just want to say that I think whoever said that Republicans, excuse me, don't want to say I'm not going to vote Republican, because I read an article that said that there's a lot of, actually it was in The Week, this magazine, and they take and digest a whole bunch of news. Probably some of you have this. Has anybody heard of it? The Week.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and they digest take news from all over the world and our country, and then they have these little short things too. But anyway, what was my point? And oh gosh, I can't think of what my point was, because I was talking about this.
Republicans.
Republicans not voting for Republicans.
Oh yes, the Republicans, they had an article. It was the last word. It's the last two things. I always have it in the magazine. The last word. This guy here is a Republican, but he says, gosh, I can't read it in this light. The disinformation of the party is crippling the GOP. And he's right, I think, because I think there's a lot of Republicans are saying, what? You know, and that's what this whole article is about, is that this man here, was voted, gosh, I can't read in my light here. Anyway, he was elected governor or mayor or something, and he beat the Republican in a big red state, which things are happening like that. And it's not real publicized, and they don't want to go out and say, oh, because, you know, Trump has power, and a lot of people who are afraid of being out of power are standing with Trump. But I think there's a lot of other people who aren't.
The counterpoint to that is that Linda Boebert just won her primary in a new district, so she's going to be the Republican candidate. Can you believe?
Oh, she's a carpetbagger and everything.
Oh yeah. Okay, so sorry.
Well, everything there's a lot of things happening, and it's
cautious optimism, I guess.
And even then, people are clamoring to get into the United States.
That's right.
With the kind of government we are potentially going to have.
Well, let's all get out and do our part. And
So you can stop the recording if you want, as far as I'm concerned, Sharon.
okay.